Suarez bringing you Business 105 Business Communication, the last class. We're going to breeze through this section as quickly as possible because I do want you guys to have some time to review your assignment. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so what's been done? So we had 2 quizzes. So you guys should be finishing up quizzes 3 and 4. And also you have to make sure that you finish your mock interview. If you haven't done so already, please call me so we can schedule a time to do that, because that is your second oral assignment and we do need to get that graded, so that way I can get you guys your grades as soon as possible. As for what's coming up or what needs to be done, we have a final exam next week and it's going to be cumulative, right? We are just focusing on what we went over in the textbook. So chapters 1, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, and 15. You guys are probably saying, oh man, cumulative, seriously? It's like, yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and review everything today and make sure that you guys have an understanding of it and make sure you guys are fully aware of what's going to be on the exam, okay? Okay, so if you remember all the way back in chapter 1, we went over some of the basic concepts when it came to communication. The main one, that I wanted you guys to remember was the BCM, or Basic Communications Model. And this is actually on page 11, where you have the 2 little pawn pieces, the orange and the blue one, going through the basic steps in communication. Pretty much the sender has an idea, sender encodes it into a message, and then the sender produces a message in a medium. The sender transmits the message through a channel. The audience receives the message, audience decodes the message, and the audience responds to the message, sometimes even giving feedback to the sender. That's a good couple of questions right in there, so that's important to know. Audience-centered approach is the idea that when you're writing or creating a message, that you have the audience's perspective in mind when you create it. Ethical dilemmas are associated with some of the different moral and ethical aspects of communication that people need to take into account. The primary thing that you want to take into account is what is a code of ethics, and that is guidelines for ethical and correct behavior written out explicitly for employees, right? And then also, if you remember the assignment that we had on formal and informal communication, what is that? Formal communication is the professional communication that happens in an office or in a job interview, and informal communication is the communication you have at a bar with your friends, okay? So chapter 3 covers diversity and the different aspects that are encompassed in that. Now, diversity is a very big subject, but the one key thing that you're going to want to focus on for the final is how to approach diversity. What are the different types of diversity, right? Also, you want to know the difference between high context cultures, which is defined as a form of communication that's more dependent on nonverbal cues to convey meaning, versus a low context culture, which is defined by explicit verbal written communication. And an example of scenarios that are high context is when you are going through a breakup, right? That's a high context communication situation. And a low context cultural situation is when you are in court. And again, these are strictly situational generalizations, so it doesn't mean that, a certain culture is more high context or a certain culture is more low context. It's situational, right? Know what xenophobia is and what are stereotypes, right? Xenophobia is the fear of anything new and different. Stereotypes are generalizations made on a culture based on some aspect of that culture. Also know some of the different types of diversity that are experienced when you have a diverse workforce. There's age diversity, there's nonverbal diversity, there's social diversity, there's gender, religious, people's different capacity or abilities. All these are encompassed in the word diversity. and it's important that you guys have that understanding when you go into the final exam. Now, Chapter 4 talks about the 3-step writing process, and we've seen this a couple of times in some of the later chapters as well, but this is really the step 1, planning your business message, step 2, writing according to that message, and 3, completing the business message, reviewing and revising based on what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Another key concept, purpose. Understanding the difference between general purpose and specific purpose. General purpose is either to inform, to persuade, or to collaborate, whereas the specific purpose identifies what you hope to accomplish in the writing. Develop an audience profile. What are some of the key concepts or key aspects that you want to have in that audience profile? Might encompass the size of the audience, the geographic distribution, the level of understanding, or some of those diversity pieces that we talked about before. And then lastly, but not least, is understanding the differences between media or mediums used. And there's 3 types of media. There's oral, visual, and written media. An example of oral is face-to-face interactions. And also understand when some of these situations are helpful. They have a chart on page, if you just give me a moment. On page 105. But the one example that should be important is how face-to-face, for example, face-to-face interaction is particularly helpful in complex, emotionally charged situations. There are a few examples on here, so knowing some of those examples for each one will definitely help you out on the final. Chapter 5, the you attitude. So the you attitude is really an idea of inclusion. Instead of writing me and I and myself, you're writing you, our, and ourselves. And that's really how you want to encompass the writing when you are adapting to your audience. Also, with that comes the idea of tonality. What is tonality? Why is it important in language? Also knowing the difference between passive and active voice, and knowing exactly when you see an example if the person is using a passive voice or if they're using an active voice. What is denotative meaning and connotative meaning? Denotative is the literal dictionary meaning, whereas connotative is associated with, or it's actually an association or an emotionally evoked meaning from a word. Okay? Okay, Chapter 10 highlights a very important subject, persuasive message writing and creation, right? And one of the main concepts that we did see in Chapter 12, but jump back to make sure that we had a better understanding of it, was the AIDA method. And AIDA is a method of, or rather a model we use in order to develop persuasive messages. And what does AIDA stand for? You have attention, interest, desire, and action. So the other aspect are the 2 types of appeals used in persuasive messaging, and that's emotional appeals and logical appeals. Remember, emotional appeals are, for example, are just that. They appeal to the human emotion. An example is when you're talking about a proposal to improve employee satisfaction in work life, and you state that being at a job for long hours can be stressful. Stressful is the emotion that you are using to appeal to that person's emotional reasoning. Logical is when you state facts, when you say that people who have time with their families end up being more productive at the work, and you use numbers to verify that information. That is a logical appeal. Then we get into Chapter 11, my favorite chapter, reports, proposals, and figuring out how to write those things out. So reports, know the different types of reports. You have informational reports that give insight to a specific subject or material, analytical reports which give an analysis of that information, and proposals which persuade people to take action based on the things that you are reporting on. Then you have the idea of analyzing data. So this isn't a math class, but you should know what mean, median, and mode are and what their importance is when analyzing data. Also, you should know the difference between quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. Quoting is quoting a source means you're reproducing the content exactly exactly as is, and indicating who it is that produced or created the original piece or document. Paraphrasing is expressing someone else's ideas in your own words, and summarizing is similar to paraphrasing, but it distills the context in fewer words. Okay? Okay, now we get into chapter 12, which talks about proposals and the different sections associated with those proposals. Now, if you remember, the proposal should have an introduction, a body, and a close, but there are specific sections that can also be covered in the different pieces. So, for example, the proposal introduction could have a background or a statement of the problem or opportunity, the solution, the scope, or even the organization, as well as the proposal body can have the proposed solution, the work plan, statement of qualifications or costs, and the proposal close is simply the final section, which generally summarizes the key points and emphasizes the benefit to the reader of following through with that proposal. Then we also get into tables, reading charts, using them appropriately and analyzing them. Some of the charts, the type of charts that I want you guys to be familiar with are table charts, line charts, bar charts, pie charts, and data visualizations. There may also be a map and a heat map on the final exam. I'm still deciding whether or not to include that. I do think you guys already have exposure with infographics, but I don't think I'm going to include that in the final exam. And last but not least, the purpose of a resume and the purpose of a cover letter are two important concepts to understand from chapter 15, because they incite why we do the resumes and cover letters and how we should approach writing them. The purpose of a resume is to get a job interview, right? It's not to get the job. So it's only supposed to create interest. And the cover letter is a solicitation for a job interview. It's a continuation of what the resume does. And with that being said, that is it for my review and my class. I hope that you guys were able to learn the key concepts and ideas to develop effective communication skills. And any questions, comments, or concerns, I want to invite you guys to approach me and contact me. You guys have my email, and you also have my number. Feel free to give me a call even after the semester if you still have questions or comments or just want to catch up. All right? I look forward to hearing about your future successes, and you guys take care. Bye.